Radio, the best around every day. DJ K-Man and DJ Get Busy. Play the music. West Indian people pretentious. I don't know what is wrong with we. All right. We like just Jeff Chapal on piano over there. We like to believe. Game on, yes. We like to believe we are Englishmen, Canadian, or Yankee. You take a Trinidadian straight from Toco and fly him to New York City. By the time he clear immigration, the man already talking Yankee. You know somebody like this, right? His suitcase full of pigeon peas, but he talk like he born in Los Angeles. The man freezing in the cold, but he buy an umbrella and digging soul. So you see no boy Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sure you will agree. But put a West Indian in New York City, overnight he become Yankee. Yes, a Yankee will live 10 years in Trinidad. He's still talking around Yankee. But a Guyanese lived 2 weeks in Detroit. Hear him. What's happening, David? An Englishman will come in your country with a cocked hat and a cane. And 6 years after, he's still saying, brother, going home on the plane. But here he West Indian friend, oh George, do come and see us again. And the jackass only drinking tea, like he mother make him in Piccadilly. So you see no boy Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sure you'll understand. What the West Indian in Nottinghamshire, overnight he's an Englishman. In Ottawa I met a fella, a very well-dressed young man. He said, you know, I'm from St. Lucia, but I spent a fortnight in London. Well, if we end up talking like Englishmen when we live in England, how come them Englishmen in the West Indies, they don't say Garblind and brother man? For 2 weeks in Leicestershire and here in Vincentian. Oh, that's super, super. And this clung in Westminster, I'm on 2 weeks sleep here from St. Lucia. St. Lucia. What a bit in a row. I'm sure you'll understand. Yes, but the West Indian in Ontario, overnight he's a Canadian. Oh, but please don't get the impression I have something against the Englishman. I don't have no chip on the shoulder concerning America. But the Yankees will say, God blind skipper. And think about this also. The Englishman will never tell you, boy, I just hug up a bitty soul. And therefore, I cannot see why, instead of today, I must say today. And don't give me no damn muffin. I grow up on cassava and green planting. Lucia, St. Lucia. What a bit in a row. I'm sure you'll understand. Yes, but the West Indian in Ontario, overnight he's a Canadian. Oh, but please don't get the impression I have something against the Englishman. I don't have no chip on the shoulder concerning America. But the Yankees will say, God blind skipper. And think about this also. The Englishman will never hug up with the soul. And therefore, I cannot see why, instead of today, I must say today. And don't give me no damn muffin. I grow up on cassava and green planted. So that even when the baker calls, I will be this way. I'll go sneak into heaven, put on the roti and say, Wap Mende. Englishmen in the West Indies, they don't say Goblin and Brother Man. Boy, Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sure you will agree. But put a West Indian in New York City, overnight he become Yankee. Yes, a Yankee will live 10 years in Trinidad. He's still talking around Yankee. But a Guyanese lived 2 weeks in Detroit. Hear him. What's that, baby? An Englishman will come in your country with a cocked hat and a cane. And 6 years after, he's still saying, brother, going home on the plane. But here he West Indian friend, oh George, do come and see us again. And the jackass only drinking tea, like his mother make him in Piccadilly. So you see the boy Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm sure you'll understand. Put a West Indian in Nottinghamshire, overnight he's an Englishman.
Oh, yes, good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Dave Martins and the Trade Winds. Legendary Dave Martin and the Trade Winds. Sometimes um, we don't recognize our own as much as we should do. And generations of us grew up with Dave Martin and the Trade Winds, Dave Martins and Trade Winds, through Guyanese sound. Our Guyanese calypso beat. Dave Martin. One of the things about us West Indians is our ability to laugh at ourselves. I think that capacity to laugh at ourselves is very instrumental in us dealing with the problems that come on a day-to-day basis. And as David Rudder said, behind that laugh is a sharp blade, because people sometimes take the laugh for skin teeth. We say, "I'll skin teeth in a laugh, I'll skin teeth in a laugh, I'll skin teeth in a laugh." But our capacity to laugh at ourselves, and there was Dave Martin engaging in that healthy self-criticism, our capacity to imitate. And one of the good things about the imitation is that we're able to adopt wherever we go to in the world, whether it's in Europe, in Africa, in America, in the rest of the Caribbean. We are able to adopt, and so it works for us. But it could be annoying. I mean, you go to an event in Guyana and you hear the DJs. They either sung in American or they sung in Jamaican, and more and more you hear in the Trinidadian song. I don't mind it sometimes, because, like I said, it's the capacity to adapt. But you're at a party or some function in Guyana, and they're talking like they just come from Jamaica. Not a Jamaican accent is wonderful; it's the Caribbean accent. But we want the Guyanese accent to be there in the mix also, So it's that copycat thing that Dave Martins was commenting on there. And our Guyanese accent is unique among Caribbean accents, in the sense that people always tell me that, you all Guyanese have the quintessential Caribbean accent. most of the times when I travel to neutral places, or even in the Caribbean, and people are wondering where I'm from, given my accent, and they would never think Guyanese. Um, I hear all the time Barbadian, and we don't know how close we are to Bajans in language because it's not obvious to us, but to others who are not West Indian, or they a lot of times they say that I am from Barbados. So Barbados is usually the first thing, and then they'll stick in a little Trinidad, and after about 3 or 4 tries, you have to say Guyana. And I was in Jamaica once, and somebody made about 8 tries, didn't get it right, and our tour guide, a Jamaican guy, he said, "Look, the man have a Caribbean accent. That's why you all can't figure it out. You all hear Trini, you all hear Bajan, you all hear Jamaican, you all hear Antiguan, you all hear St. Lucian. But the Guyanese accent seems to be a blend of all of those. But our DJs, I think they kill me. You know, they kill me. They kill me. I don't mind the Jamaican. I don't mind if a Jamaican DJing and give me the Jamaican accent, or I don't mind a Guyanese who give me 5 minutes of Jamaican, 5 minutes of Trini, 5 minutes of Bajan, and give me a half an hour Guyanese. I don't mind the mix. But if you listen to them DJ, oh God. And if they ain't singing like that, they're singing like Yankee. And if they ain't singing like Yankee, they I notice the Trini thing get in the way now and so on. I'm not knocking the accents, don't get me wrong. I'm a proud West Indian, and I want you all to be proud West Indians and not to frown on our accents. I think one of the most beautiful songs in the world is when you go into a room and you have like 10 Caribbean accents mixing up together. It's a very beautiful song. But the copycat thing sometimes just kill me. Kill me. Yeah. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101 tonight on a Monday night. It's good to be with the struggle again, and I would like to thank all of you who are joining us, and those of you who are in Europe, in England, like my friend Asha Lee, who I spoke to last week. You know, it's close to midnight there, and really, this is human service staying up, because without you in the audience, there's really no show. So really, you are as much part of it as I am. Or for my friends down there in Arizona and California, I met a couple of people visiting Guyana from California. And I think California right now is about 4 hours behind New York and Guyana. So they're still in the afternoon. There's bright daylight down there in Arizona. Arizona is 3 hours behind. So for those of you who are making the sacrifice, I say thanks to you. Good evening to you, Lachman, joining us from West Bobis. My friend Vibert White, who owes me a drink, but he says he has not been feeling well, and so he didn't make the sojourn to Buxton as he usually does for Emancipation. So he owes me a drink. Good evening to all the people from Buxton Bagdam side. I went down there, the back of the village, you know, as we say, Bagdam side, and you know, like every other community, like all communities, you have the segments. Buxton Bagdam side is supposed to be the dreadest, and Friendship Bagdam side, dread. And went down there and spent 2 evenings with the boys and girls down there. There are mostly farmers down there and laborers and so on, and they, you know, they've always brought something fresh to our politics and our sociology. And I had the chance to spend 2 evenings down there. And it was good to connect with people that I went to school with, some of the younger ones who didn't know me from back then who know me now. And the announcement by the WPA that I would be its presidential candidate and leader of the list, seemed to have resonated in Buxton and at the back there. So I went down there on Saturday night, and they asked me to go back last night, and so on. I have a good chat, and we got some immediate volunteers to start working. You can volunteers to start working. You know, one of my schoolmates, Sir McGarrill, who is my classmate, and Henry Rodney, and myself, we used to do drama together, and he lives down there, and he was down there, and he volunteered to come back into the struggle. And it seems as though our announcement has given some momentum to some people, and that is the idea. Yeah, that is the idea. Is that no single party really has all the answer, appeals to all of the people. I in some instances we have people who all three of the major opposition parties appeal to them, so they don't really have a problem. And then, there are those who are the Nigel Hughes people, those who are Aubrey Norton people, and we are discovering that they're David Hines / WPA people, and so forth. A lot of thanks to a lot of those who've reached out. The word congratulations, I've not seen it so many times in recent times. Those who have either through email or WhatsApp or whatever, send their congratulations and volunteer to join the WPA camp as we prepare for the fight of our lives. We are in the fight of our lives. And so big up to the people down there at Buxton back down side, and I have to make it across the Friendship back down side. I haven't been there in almost a year, but it was good to really see the young people and the working people, those people who we call the salt of the earth, really welcome me and express their how should I put it? Not willingness, express their enthusiasm to get this struggle going. I also spent some time with the young people, because the young man who died via accident there in Buxton, and he was buried yesterday, and them young people funeral and the wake, as we would say in the old days, tear me tail wake, plenty people, plenty food, and so on. And I had the chance to spend a couple of hours at the wake, and was able to interact with some of the young ones, talking about the teenagers, some of them who are going to be voting for the first time, early 20s, and so forth, and get to listen to them express their own view. Some of them are brave enough to come across and talk. Some of them, the usual thing. They're young people, so they don't know me in that way, and they'll be whispering and so on. And you go across and chat with them. And the young people are in. They are very much tuned in. Even for somebody like me who always believe they're tuned in, but to learn how much tuned in they are, it really gladdens my heart and makes you want to live and continue the struggle for another day. Yes, then is Bacchanal funeral. Yes, Bacchanal funeral. But it's good to be there with the young people, and to watch them in their own way send messages to us. I am not one of those who condemn young people because they decide they're going to smoke the thing or drink up them energy, them drinking heavy stuff. We did that when we were young. And so those of who think them because they're, lighters in the air and things, they're expressing themselves in their own ways. And one of the things that I am committed to I am committed to is if we get close to government, and part of government is to try to channel those energies. Because what I see among those young people is a lot of energy. And it's to channel those energies in a way that they become productive for themselves. I'm sure they're productive for themselves and their family, but productive for the community. And so I embrace some form of national service. Maybe not the national service as in Burnham time the same way, but some form of that thing where our young people can, in a collective way, be engaged and develop a consciousness of themselves and the worth of the nation. I think the nation, the young people are responding to the fact that the nation doesn't seem to care about them. And their thing is that if the nation don't care about them, they ain't care about the nation. They ain't care about the nation, right? And that is something that we, the political people, the public people, the leaders, we have to examine ourselves. Because if we don't care about them, they're not going to care about us. And they tend to equate the nation with us. And so we have to find a way, in a programmatic policy way, of engaging. The PPP is engaging them in the nastiest of ways, because the PPP is playing to what they see as a weakness, especially among African Guyanese youth. And they're playing to that weakness. They're playing to that weakness, which is, in the end, is counterproductive to our people. So you hear some of our young people, young African Guyanese, they say, well, you know, when the PPP in power, the money running and the drugs running. And I understand that. But the PPP is using that as a means of keeping them in the ghetto. And by ghetto here, I don't mean a physical place. Ghetto means that you ghettoize people, you isolate them to a place. And if you isolate people to a place, you call it ghettoization. And the PPP wants to isolate them to that place, that where they think that their worth is when the money running according to them and the drugs got sell. And I am saying that we have to present an alternative way for them. And I am committed to that. I'm committed to finding an alternative way to those young people. When I look at them, I see myself 50, 60 years ago. But more than that, I see a potential. I see a potential, a national potential that is not being harnessed. And I have come to realize nobody talks to them. Nobody talks to them. They feel that we political people don't talk to them because we don't try to put ourselves in their positions. No, I'm not making excuses here for bad behavior. They had bad behavior in me time. I had my share of bad behavior. They got bad behavior in every generation. And so I'm not making excuses for bad behavior. If you're jumping people's house and you're robbing people and raping people, I'm not making excuses for that at all. But those things do not represent the majority of our young people. They do not represent the majority of our young people. The majority of our young people are as productive and forward-looking. But opportunities are not there for them. The PPP will never present opportunities for African Guyanese young people. They see them as their enemies. And so it is up to us. And you know, the majority of them, they say to me, you know, Mr. Hines, Dr. Hines, sir, I'm tickled by all the titles, but I understand the young people, eh? And they say thanks for standing up for Buxton, because you know the tribal in there, right? And no matter what happened, that tribalism remained there. Standing up for Buxton, they see people like myself as doing that, Kadaki and so on. And then they say standing up for Black people. Standing up for Black people. And so they are tuned in. Sister Robin Simon was there at the wake the night, and you know, she can attest to, you know, the young people, they were having a good time. And They're having a good time. And they're what we call coalition people. They're what we call coalition people. They recognize the party and the parties, and they like the parties and so on, but they are coalition people. The other people I want to say thanks is the both. I went to Dr. Simpson de Silva's wake and his funeral, and there were a number of a lot of East Indian brothers there, brothers more than sisters, and some of them wanted to take selfies. Well, not wanted, they did take selfies with me and so on, you know. And they wanted to chat. They used the word respect. And want to stick with. I am not surprised, right? Oh, they're the diehard PPP people who will cuss me black, blue when the day comes. You know, it don't bother me. But I know that they do not represent the majority of Indian Guyanese. And the word respect was used. And then when I went to the wake there the other night at the Buxton front, you know, Buxton used to be about at least 20% Indians. They live at Buxton front. And, you know, they've moved now over to Annandale Corbin Park. But a lot of them, scores of them, I saw at the funeral there. And I was amazed when a set of young Indian girls, there couldn't be more than 21, 22, asked to take a selfie with me. And they said, Ms. Steins, I just watch you, you know, and so on. So there are things that we leaders are discovering as we are moving around. And I think some of those who think they understand what's happening in our society, they're going to get a rude awakening. I happened today to be looking for something on the internet, and I bumped into two guys having a conversation. Boy, I forget Henri somebody, but Conrad August was with him. And of course, they were going after us politicians, as they should. Very critical of us and so on. And of course, they recognized when I stopped and I listened for a good hour at what they were saying. And what it says to me is that people have something to say. And the people who have views about us and how we are acting in their name. And one can learn from that conversation. Or those conversations one can learn from them. And so I like I said, I spent an hour or so, and I think I got a sense of the thing. One of the things about Guyana and Guyanese is that we are not a monolith. We do have a diversity of views. And you know, politics, the ethnic politics, make us look like a monolith because we sometimes have to take positions for the group. Unfortunately so. But we are not a monolith. Among African Guyanese, I think there are several political tendencies as we are discovering now. I mean, as I walk and I listen to people, I think Nigel Hughes is really bringing out a certain tendency among African Guyanese. And I can only speak for that group because I don't get around the other groups. Aubrey Norton, of course, brings out another facet of the African Guyanese. And, you know, people like myself, we are discovering that we do bring out a certain facet, a certain aspect of the view. And like I said, some people embody 3 tendencies, 4 tendencies, and you know, so it's about understanding our people. If we're going to win this election as a coalition, as a so-called opposition coalition, I think we have to understand our base. We have to understand our base, and our base is not as monolith as we think it is. In many regards, I think the base is sometimes ahead of us. Good evening to you. Good night to some of you. Good afternoon to some of you. Welcome to Politics 101. Some of you, all of you, most of you would have known that the WPA announced over this weekend that in their initial preparation for elections, they've asked me to be the party's presidential candidate and leader of its list. Now, the presidential candidate is easy to spot. Some people didn't see the leader of his list. And what that leader of the list is, that if we are going as a coalition, that I would be the leader of our list in the coalition. So we were saying two things. If, God forbid, that we have to go alone, that I would be the presidential candidate. And if we're going with other parties in a coalition, I would be the leader of our list in that coalition. The press called me very quickly to ask if our naming of a presidential candidate means that we are no longer going to be rooting for coalition politics. And as I said very clearly, we believe, and we continue to believe, the now opposition has its best chance if we go in as a coalition. But coalition building is not something that you wake up and you do, because you're talking about different parties sitting down at the table, agreeing on a common program, agreeing on a leadership structure, because the Constitution says you have to have a presidential candidate and only one leader can be the presidential candidate. And now we have prime ministerial candidate and all of that stuff. So each party has to put itself in order. And I think that if each party puts itself in order and puts itself in readiness for the election, if and when the time comes for us to put together a coalition, the coalition will be ready. One of the things people are saying, well, they're going to be a snap election and the opposition is not ready. And it may be a fair comment. But if the individual parties are ready, then the coalition is going to be ready. And you notice the AFC, Brother Nigel is in the hinterland this past week. So each party is doing its work, and the WPA wanted to signal that we are doing its work. You see, the last time we went into coalition, we spent a lot of energies trying to build the coalition, to build APNU. We didn't pay attention to our party. We spent a lot of time working on the manifesto of the APNU, both for 2015 and 2020, and also for 2011. We gave to the coalition a lot of our energies. At the end of the day, when we got government, they gave us the big party, which control everything, gave us one minister and one parliamentarian. That's it. And the same person was the minister, had to be the parliamentarian. So after all the work, we weren't properly represented. And then, some of the big party people say, well, it's what you all bring. And you tell them, look, we brought our work in the manifesto and convincing people to vote for the coalition and so on. And we may understand that. They don't understand that. Or they pretend not to understand it. So this time around, we have decided that we are going to strengthen ourselves. That's the first step towards coalition. Hence, the naming of our leadership team. And for those of you who have been urging me to get with the program, as the young people would say, and to show our hand and to state where we stand, you've gotten your answer. I know it's been a painstaking wait, so over 2 years, 3 years, people saying, where's the WPA, who's the WPA leader, all those questions, because that's where the society is, right? The society wants to know who's the leader, who are your office bearers, etc., etc. And the WPA does not come out of that tradition of quote-unquote leader. But we have to understand that's where people's consciousness are. And so therefore, in many regards, we have listened to what people are saying, and we have tried to point our party in that direction. So it's a signal. It's a signal. Now that we have taken that first step, we are now going to broaden our work. And we would like to ask those of you who are favorable to us to join us. To join us as we prepare. Some of you have already joined, some of you have already indicated. And there are levels of membership. Some of you may want to be card-bearing members. That's okay. That's okay. We welcome that. That you come into the party, you contribute your resources to the party, your abilities to the party. But we also make allowance what we call follower members. These are members who do not necessarily want to hold the party card, but who would want to contribute to the vision that we are putting forward. So we want to invite you to join us and tell us how you can help. How you can help. So we are going to be inviting membership, and we're going to be resuscitating party groups, and so forth. You can contact us. Kedaki, you know how to contact Kedaki. I'm going to put up the number here where to get me, and the number of the WPA office for those of you who are prepared to go there. Because if you're fighting, you need soldiers, you need troops. And when we sit down at that table to put together our coalition, we have to be able to say WPA brings something to the table, as they say, something tangible to the thing. Now, we are not, as I said, in the business of splitting the opposition. I want to make that very clear. And no splitting of the opposition here. We are about strengthening the opposition. When we took the initiative of the Buxton Line Top to have the three leaders on there, we wanted to signal to the country where we stood. Where we stood. We are for the unity of the opposition. I want to make that abundantly clear. We are for unity of the opposition. But in order for that unity to be strong, each link has to be strong. And so we in the WPA are saying we are about to strengthen our link. We're about to strengthen our link. So those of you who see us as speaking maybe for you, representing your view of where we need to go, then you have to empower us so that you can be the table. Now, we are very clear. We are very clear. Our platform will be premised on equitable distribution of our resources. Uncompromising. Ethnic distribution. We are of the view that Black people are being left behind with the wealth. And we are not wavering on that. We're not dancing around on that. That there is an ethno-racial bias in the distribution of wealth. And WPA is saying that that would be righting that wrong is going to be number one on our platform. Because we think that if we get the racial distribution right, we are going to get other distribution right. If we get the racial distribution of wealth right, we're going to get the class distribution right. The class distribution, because there is a class bias that it's the Indian and Portuguese elite who are hogging the resources. And then because Indian poor vote for the PPP, a little trickle down to the Indian poor. But there's no African Guyanese elite there that is getting big money from the oil. So there's nothing trickling down to African Guyanese. There's no Amerindian elite hogging the wealth. So nothing is trickling down. So insofar as there's trickle down, it is trickling down to the East Indian poor. The African Guyanese poor and the Amerindian poor, there's nothing to trickle down. WPA objects the trickle down theory. And we are saying that we are going to be using policy and the law to ensure that the wealth is distributed. That the wealth is distributed in terms of policies, in terms of what we spend where, but also we want wealth to trickle directly to the families. And we go back to our cash transfer. We don't call it cash grant. We are transferring wealth via way of monetary resources from the government coffers directly into individuals and families. Not cash grant. We're not granting nothing. We are transferring by law. That is where we are different from the PPP cash grant. So we are not cash grant people. We are cash transfer. Going along with what we call a universal basic income. That is, each Guyanese adult is going to be guaranteed an income. Basic income. And so what you work for is on top of that basic income. Some people stupidly say, well, if you give people a basic income, they won't want to work. If you give them a basic income, they will want to work because they're putting more value on their labor now. Because they're realizing that their country is saying, here is the value of your labor. So that transfer of wealth, from the first day we get into office, we get busy with that. And the WPS put together what we call our policy, our economic policy unit. That has begun to work. It's headed by Professor Clive Thomas, who everybody knows, and Dr. Dennis Canterbury, who is our secretary for economic policy. And they're beginning the work on putting together the plan. So the first day we put our hands on power, we are starting to change the way it's resourcing. And we are saying in 2018, we figure that given the oil that we knew we had and the income that would come from the oil, that $5,000 US or $1 million Guyana dollar would be what each family will get. We are revising that now because we are getting now more oil and more resources, and that figure is going to increase. It's going to increase. Now, each party is going to bring its own baby to the table. And we are saying that is our baby. The other baby for us is education. You know, they always say WPA is the intellectual party and so on. What they really mean is, you know, quote unquote certified education people. And education, the state of education is in terrible shape. The first thing we are going to do is that we are going to raise the pay of teachers at the primary, secondary, and the university level. You can't pay teachers what we are paying them and expect your education system to work. If you underpay me, then I will underperform. And if I, as a teacher, underperform, then the whole system underperforms. That nonsensical 10% that they are now offering, they've gone from 6.5 to 10 as some big thing. And we are understanding that some union leaders are wanting to fall for that. Listen, I'm saying to teachers now, revolt against any union leader who's accepting 10% in your name. Revolt. Revolt. I've been very patient on this thing with the union leaders because I give them the benefit of the doubt. I think they held the line. They went on strike. They came off. They went back on strike. And we as political people should not substitute ourselves for union leaders. But in this instance, if any union leader take 10% in your name, revolt against them. Because if the GTU takes 10%, that's a bribe. It's a bribe. It's a bribe to them to keep you all quiet. Working People's Alliance in WPA says, that's where we stand. We are calling on the teachers to revolt against their leadership if their leadership take any 10% in your name. And we have absolutely no apologies to make for that. At some point, you have to take a stand. And if we have anything to do with power, we call the unions in immediately. And we negotiate a living wage for teachers. The other thing that we have to deal with in our education is something we don't like to talk about, illiteracy. That thing is beating up our country. More than 50% of our young people are functionally illiterate. Some of them, just able to write their name and so on. There's no shame in illiteracy. The shame is when the country does nothing about it, when the government does nothing about it. That's where the shame is. Those young people who are functionally illiterate, it is not because they wake up and say, I want to be literate. It is the government of this country that has rendered them illiterate. You can't want to pay teachers what you are paying them and expect them to give 100% to the children. So education, equitable distribution of wealth are two of the first things the WPA is going to struggle for once it is part of government. And when we come to you, we are campaigning on those issues. Immediately as the announcement was made, some people start to give me citizenship. Dr. Hines is ineligible to run because he's an American citizen. He's dual citizen. Our friend Ruel Johnson led the pack, and I had to say to Ruel, as I said, because I was a candidate in 2011, a candidate in 2020 on the coalition seat. And some people thought I was an American citizen. And I had to take my green card and my Guyana passport and throw it in front of a certain PNC leader and say, I ain't craving for citizenship. I've always had one citizenship, one, Guyanese. Never change that. No matter where I travel. It didn't take a law to ban people who are not citizens of Guyana from participating in elected politics. They didn't take that law from me. I made that decision a long, long time ago because I knew that once I was finished studying, I was coming back to my country to contribute to my country. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a job in my country under the PPP when I finished studying. So I had to continue working overseas. But every year I come back to my country to live. Not vacation. Vacation is when you put on your baby socks. And you come and you spend your 10, 14 days and you have a good time. What's happening there, brother? Today is 3.5 months since I've been in Guyana. 3.5 months. I ain't come on vacation. I come to participate in my country's politics and sociology. So for all those who say he's an American citizen, I ain't no American citizen. I've addressed that before, but want to take loud and clear. I've always traveled on one passport, Guyana passport, one citizenship, right? And I would not be dishonest to know that the law prohibits someone who's not a citizen, and I am not a citizen and saying I'm participating. No, no, no. So I hope this puts it to rest. I do have a residence in Guyana. I hope this puts it to rest. There were concerns about our leadership. There weren't any women in the leadership. Our women members did not put themselves up to be in the leadership team. But we hope to correct that soon as we convince our female members to step forward. We do have female members. They just have not put themselves up, and so they could not be included. But that is something that we are going to correct. And we're inviting our female followers to join the party, because we want to see women in the leadership. We want to see young people in the leadership, and we are working towards that. The other thing is that, as you would have noticed, we have a council of elders that includes veteran party members, Dr. Clive Thomas, Dr. Maurice Odler, Dr. Rupert Rupnarine, are the present members of the council of elders. Immediately as the announcement was made, people began to ask whether Dr. Rupnarine is active again. As most of you in the public would know, he has been in retirement or semi-retirement because of ill health. And some people were wondering after they saw the announcement whether he's back and things. No, Dr. Rupnarine is not engaged in day-to-day politics. He remains in semi-retirement. Some would say he remains in retirement, but he's very much part of our party, and he is always available for consultation by our party. So those of you who are inquiring about Dr. Rupnarine's well-being, he's alive and he's well, but he's not back into active politics. He's just part of the Council of Elders, and that his name is there is a testimony to his commitment to his party. But we're asking you, especially the media, not to be bombarding him, because he's not into day-to-day politics as an elder. So we want to make that very clear. And we continue as a party to be grateful for the services of our senior members. Dr. Rupnarine has given almost 50 years of service to the WPA, and we continue to recognize him, and that is why the Council of Elders is there, to serve in an advisory way to the leadership. And even when in Dr. Rupnarine's case, he's not part of the day-to-day. So we just want to make that very, very, very clear. So we've seen lots of goodwill. Thanks to all of you who are expressing your gratitude to us in the WPA, and expressing your enthusiasm that we have put ourselves forward in a real serious way. The thing. Now, our position on elections are clear. We believe, like all other parties, that elections are important and they represent a way of changing governance. Sometimes parties like ours that come out of the Caribbean left, the revolutionary left, people consider us as revolutionaries. And there's always a feeling that revolutionaries don't like elections. But we are revolutionaries because we want to transform the society. And in the process of transforming the society, transform the way we do elections. But we are committed to elections. We do not believe election is a bourgeois thing. We feel election, our people have fought and died for the right to vote. Our people have fought and died for the right to vote. So we don't see it as no bourgeois thing. It is very much people-oriented, and in that regard, we are committed to elections. But we also want to point out that elections that put up the outcome that the 2020 election put up, we frown on that. The 2020 elections threw up and install government. We are against that kind of election. And once you install a government, the government begins to behave the way the PPP is behaving, viciously. It behaves as though it owns the country, it owns the treasury. It licks down everybody in its way, especially those it doesn't like. It decimates an entire ethnic group. It spends the money like if it is personal money. It is the elections of 2020 that gave rise to that type of government. And so we want to change the way elections are done, even as we participate in elections. As a first step, we want biometrics and a clean voters list. As a first step, we know the PPP is against biometrics because we know without biometrics, they stand to thief at least 2 seats. We know that the bloated voters list gives them 200,000, at least 200,000 voters by which to duck their hand in. And we are saying, even as we are preparing for elections, we are also fighting for a proper electoral machinery so that we don't enter elections in which we lose before we start. Rigged elections in 2024 is a recipe for national disaster. We have seen that national disaster for the last 4 years. A runaway train, a dictatorial government, a government that revels in racial policy. And so WPA is committed to leveling the playing field when it comes to elections, even as we are preparing for elections. The second thing we want to say, and that we are going to be campaigning on, is the end of winner-take-all politics. Winner-take-all means that the PPP wins with 50% of the vote. And I have to be very careful here because the elections were inconclusive, so we don't know who wins. We don't know who won. I've always said that on this program. But those who installed, they gave the PPP 50% of the vote. And the PPP has taken 50% of the vote and turned that into some mandate to beat up people. It means that the supporters of those who got the other 50% of the vote are not represented in government. They're not at the table to distribute the oil money. They're not at the table to decide the laws of this country. They're not at the table to determine when the government goes back for supplemental money. They're not in a position to determine what happens in the police force, in the army. They're not in the position to determine who gets contract or who doesn't get contract. All of that is determined by a party that was given 50%. And the biggest victims of that system are Black people. It pains me, it pains us to watch Black people cry and complain. A people who have built this country, initiated the building of this country, contributed like others to the building of this country, and they have to sit by and cry tears. Tears of frustration, tears of sorrow. And we are saying that system of winner take all must go. If we did not have the system that we have now, the PPP could not decide on its own to give the teachers 10%. That the WPA, the AFC, and the PNC would be in the government, and that together we would decide with the unions how much the teachers will get. Right now, the PPP alone decide what teachers get because of winner take all. And if we abolish that system where you get 50% of the votes and you get 50% of the cabinet, and the Minister of Education may not even come from your party. You win 50% of the vote, you get 50% of the cabinet. Not 100% of the cabinet. To beat up on the rest of the population. It's a violation of democracy that those who did not vote for the so-called 50% have no say in their country. The PPP decide who gonna get locked up, who gonna get charged. We have to put a stop to that. It must be government by the people. Sir Arthur Lewis said, all those who are affected by a decision must be at the table to make that decision. That's where we're going. That's where the WPA stands. The PPP said it doesn't want no shared government, but we can't force them. If they don't want shared government, then we have to get government on our own as the opposition. And when we get into government, use our bully pulpit in government to democratize government. And if they still don't want to come, then we would have done what we are supposed to do. But knowing the PPP, they will come. So we are abolishing winner-take-all politics. That our economic future must be determined by all parties. That Norton must be at the table with Ali or whoever, and Nigel Hughes and David Hines and others. All of us must sit down on the table and decide how our money is going to be spent. Not Ali and Jack Dio alone. That's what we mean by winner-take-all politics must go. That African people must be able to walk in Guyana and say, we are powerful too. And you can only do that if the legal system, the constitutional requirements, empowers you. Right now, the Constitution, which is a winner-take-all constitution, only empowers the so-called winner. We want a constitutional requirement that empowers all of us, that we sit at that table and decide the future of our country. So we in the WP are moving forward with some clear intentions. We are revamping education in Guyana once we get power. Every African must learn about African history. Every Indian must learn about African history. Every Amerindian must learn about African history. Every African must learn about Amerindian history, about East Indian history, so that we don't have our children believing that Black people are less than people. We are going to make ethnic education a part of our curriculum. Our people are going to learn about their country, the real history of their country. Our teachers are going to be paid, and if we pay our teachers, we then hold them to high standards. We are going to wipe out illiteracy, and it could be done. Cuba did it. Grenada in 4 years was able to almost wipe out illiteracy from that country. We are going to train our teachers in literacy, because we have teachers who can teach English and math and social science, but they can't teach literacy. We're going to train a brigade of literacy teachers. And then we're going to deal with illiteracy in the wider community. When Aubrey Norton was advisor on youth, he set up night schools. And we are going to adopt those night schools. And in those night schools, we're going to encourage our parents who are not as literate as they should be to go to those night schools and to become literate. So it's not literacy just in schools, but outside of the schools. I'm letting you all know where the WPA is going. Where the WPA. At the university, we have the money to make our university a top-class Research One university. The lecturers are going to be paid properly, comparable with the University of the West Indies. The physical condition of that university will be changed. A university is your research hub. Goal is going to go. Goal is going to go. Because this is not about bribing people. This is about educating our nation. The university will be transformed. We are doing oil now, as we must. That's where resources will come from. But oil, we know, will not last. We have to encourage our university to engage in research in renewable energies. Renewable energy. We have the capacity in this country. We are an oil-producing country, a petro state. And our university must be one of the best oil university in the world. So we are fleshing out our plans for our country. And always our plans will start with what our people want. What our people want. All those people who got their homes licked down in Mokau and Hillfoot and those places, government will immediately compensate those people. And in wherever it is possible to reinstate them to their property, we will reinstate them to the property. WPA will fight for that. And there's no statute for anybody who kneel down on a woman. I saw that picture today with that woman in the mud and police kneeling down. Those rogue policemen, and I love police. I said, police don't interfere with me. I get respect from policemen and women, and I respect them because they're my sons and they're my daughters. But those who join with this government to engage, they will have to be brought to book. You don't kneel on a woman's chest because you're a policeman and feel that you can strut about the society. And there is no penalty for it. Such policemen must face the law. And so this is not about paying lip service. This is about reassuring our people that there's some of us who are prepared to go beyond talk. People's property must be restored to them. And where the state has occupied where people's property, we will make sure that we put in place an expert committee that properly and adequately compensate those people who have been beheaded from their own property. So this is about people. This is about people. As I said, no party is an island. No party is an island. No party can watch you in the opposition now and say, I know I get this support. The last time the PNC went to an election as PNC, was 2006. It got 34% of the vote then. In 2011, it went as APNU. 2015, it went as coalition. 2020, it went as coalition. So we're assuming the PNC is the large party, and we have to do so based on history. And we would be foolish to say that the PNC does not command the largest appeal in the opposition camp, the opposition base. They do. But that doesn't mean that the PNC alone command the support among our people. The beauty about the opposition is that we have riches in terms of people who are leading us. There are new leaders who are coming to the fore. I can think of somebody like Nima Flu-Best there in the East Bank, who I admire so much. I mean, she's PNC, I'm not from the PNC. But I admire that sister because she has a sense of what our duty is. What is it as political people we have to do? And somebody like that is a leader for the future. Not 10 years future. The future is tomorrow. Somebody like that has to be in government to help to shape the new vision. So we do have capacity on our side. The big leaders' name will call the Nortons and the Hughes and the Amanzas and so on and so forth. But I tell you, there are some young leaders coming through in the PNC, in the AFC, in the WPA, that they will represent the future. And we have to make it easy for them, not more difficult for them. And so the vision of the Working People's Alliance, as we go into these elections, is that we want to win so that we can transform our country. So that we can transform our country. We are people. What the people want. That's where we start. A lot of people have been asking me, so Dr. Hines, what's your position on the oil contract? Well, the oil contract is the oil contract. And contracts are made to be revised. You sign a contract in 2018, 2019, and 5 years, 6 years later, you go back and you revise the culture, the contract as needs be. Our focus in the WPA is not on the contract with Exxon, although we recognize that the contract itself is lopsided. But we are concentrating on the contract between the government of Guyana and the people of Guyana. You can't want just to talk about the contract between the government and Exxon and don't talk about the social and political contract between the government and the people of Guyana. That, for us, is a contract that must be spoken about. And if Exxon is taking advantage of Guyana, one would expect that the government of Guyana would not take advantage of its own people. And if you are taking advantage of your own people, you have no moral authority to talk about Exxon taking advantage of you. Charity begins at home. And so we take a different view to the oil story. Yes, the oil contract is lopsided. Yes, at some point we have to come to the table and look at that contract again. And this time when we go to the table, we must go to the table from a position of strength. Our country must be united. We must have a united government that sits there and speaks as a government. We must be able to say to Exxon, here is our program to empower our people. And you, by shortchanging us, you're shortchanging our people. When Exxon look and see how the government giving the money to their friend, family, and as the PNC people say, favorites. Exxon is laughing and say, you're robbing your own people so I can rob you. And those who in the oil lobby, God bless them. But a lot of times they are not putting their fingers where it should be. And that is the government. They're cussing Exxon, but not cussing the government. If Exxon see how the government robbing its people, why would Exxon don't rob the government? Because the government don't care. They don't care if Exxon ride them, because all they're interested in is riding Guyanese people. That's where the Working People's Alliance stand. For those of you who want to know where we stand on oil. We have enough oil revenues to start to balance what we give to the investors and what we get for the Guyanese people. We have enough. It's about balancing it. And you can demand more from Exxon if you give your people more. Are you hearing me good here tonight? And that's the vision that we in the WPA are taking into these elections. We're going to continue to talk throughout this week about these issues as we begin to flesh out more and more the WPA's position. Thanks to all of you who have reached out to me, reached out to the party, and who have congratulated us and pledged to work with us. And those of you who, as I said, were a little bit confused as to whether that means the WPA going alone. No, it doesn't mean that. That is why we said that Dr. Hines is the presidential candidate and leader of our list of candidates. So if you're going alone, you have to get a presidential candidate. If you're going with others, you have to have your list of candidates that you carry into the opposition. And so Dr. Hines is the leader of our list. So let not your hearts be troubled. We have not given up on coalition politics. We recognize that what's happening now is that each party is strengthening itself, getting itself ready. And once we are ready to do the coalition thing, I'm sure you all will be apprised of that. All right? As leader of the WPA's list, I am in touch with Leader Norton of the PNC. I'm also in touch with Mr. Hughes, and we have not reached the point yet where we're talking coalition. But I can tell you from the WPA standpoint that we are in touch with the other two major parties in the opposition. And we have already said that this thing about my biometrics and a clean voters list has to be fought by all the parties. All the parties. It can't. No one party can fight that fight. All right? So that's where we stand. I thank you all again for showing confidence in us, and rest assured that we will try as much as we can to repay that confidence. So I'll see you all tomorrow night. I know I have guests on tomorrow night. I can't remember off the top of my head who they are. Wednesday night is going to be African night. We're going to be talking about the African vision, because we have the political vision as the political parties. But as you all know, I am also what they now call Black activist. And so part of my energies is to come up with a Black manifesto, right? The Black manifesto is not necessarily PNC manifesto and the WPA manifesto and the AFC manifesto. The Black manifesto is what we as Black leaders want for Black people. And so the activists, some of us are in the political arena, the party arena. Some of us are not in the party arena. But we're going to begin that conversation towards a Black manifesto as we move into these elections. Good night. I'll see you all tomorrow night.